Hello everyone, welcome back to Extract the Fact. I'm your host, Adam Israelovitz. Happy Monday. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that has again been debated nationally, frequently in the past couple of years in the news media and in the Supreme Court. So we should just jump right into it today because I have a lot to get to. And that is, we're going to be talking about sports gambling. So our main question today is, should sports betting be legal in the United States? So the Supreme Court voted with 6 justices in favor of legalizing sports gambling recently. So now, because of that, it is now up to each state in their own state legislators to legalize it for their own state. So for example, states like Nevada and Pennsylvania have already legalized sports gambling in their own states. And because they've gotten this federal authority to do so, now each state can go about making that own decision for themselves. So first, on one side, I'll be arguing that yes, sports betting should be legal in all U.S. states and should be pursued as a means to generate revenue for society. And on the other hand, we see the no argument, saying sports gambling is harmful and it should be illegal throughout all states in the United States. So first, I'll be arguing for the yes component, and we see that it's really a contrast of economics and morals and social culture. So it's a really interesting blend of the three today. So let's just jump right in. So from USA Today, there are reports that 13 states accumulated $34 billion in gaming revenue. So we see Las Vegas led the way with over $10 billion in revenue. And also on that list are states like West Virginia with $948 million in revenue, Mississippi with $2.25 billion, New Jersey with $3.05 billion, and finally Pennsylvania with $3.6 billion in annual revenue. So again, this is an early estimate because sports gambling is a very recent issue that was just declared by the Supreme Court. These are early figures from the past year, and we can expect those numbers to increase as we continue when sports gambling builds up its infrastructure because it was just legalized. Now, this revenue that I just mentioned, sports betting, will also help states financially. So thereby directing we can get help in public schools, senior citizen centers, and increasing state wages. Now, the Perspective website, the website is called perspective.com. They claim that once the sports gambling infrastructure is built up in each state, we can expect an increase of 125 to 152,000 jobs, which is a $6 billion in annual, and as well, there's a $6 billion annual increase in revenue per state by 2023. So that means in 5 years from now, in each state that accepts state gambling, there will be an average of around a $6 billion increase in revenue per state, which is obviously not a small number. And that just by legalizing and just by the state accepting this, that is a huge stream of revenue. So now many people can draw parallels to the legalization of marijuana. Again, another controversial social issue, the issue of using marijuana, kind of like the legalization of sports gambling, which is another controversial sports issue. We kind of see a trend of social culture moving to the left here as we get more progressive and more accepting in exchange for a huge increase in state-by-state revenue. Again, there's a huge interest already in sports gambling. So this is a popular move that was accepted and called for by many. Legalization of sports gambling is what many people wanted, and now they got it. So this is not some unpopular thing that the Supreme Court did. And in addition, legalization can help drive out the dark web of sports gambling. So obviously sports gambling existed before the Supreme Court legalized sports gambling. It was just illegal. And now, because it's legal, there can be increased regulation, and we can sniff out the dark web of sports gambling, which is illegal and detrimental to society. With this regulation. So in addition, sports gambling is nice because it makes games more exciting and it increases the tent of sports. So if you're not the biggest sports fan, let's take football for example, if you're not the biggest football fan, maybe if there's a gambling thing and you have a chance to make money on the game, you'll be more inclined to watch, which will increase the popularity of the sport and make sports a bigger draw for many people. Many people say this is a comparison to fantasy football, which is usually free to play, but people are more invested in the games that they watch because they have a personal connection to it, which can also be said if there is sports gambling allowed in the NFL. So those are kind of the main components, again, really heavily geared towards economics for sports gambling and fan interest. So now we'll look at the no side, saying sports gambling is actually harmful. and it should be illegal in the United States. So let's just jump right in here. A huge concern is corruption. So let's take the NCAA, for example. How the NCAA, for instance, regulates sports betting if it's been shown throughout recent controversies that it has a lot of trouble regulating the basic tenets of amateurism. So, for example, the NCAA has had a history of huge corruption scandals ranging from this past year with Louisville basketball, Arizona basketball, pay for play, and Syracuse basketball scandals. These are all huge issues that have rocked college basketball. And whether it's pay for play, so a player is being paid by a coach to come play for the league, or signing autographs, it is a huge issue that college athletes have to deal with. Because college athletes are not being paid, it is another reason that there's a lot of controversy surrounding how athletes can sustain a life when playing for 4 years for free in college. So because college athletes don't get paid, a more revenue stream from gambling equals more exploitation of these athletes, because sports gambling will increase revenue for these college basketball and college football organizations. That will increase their revenue, which in turn exploits the athletes even more because they're still not getting paid. So the Ringer website says in 2007, and now we're transitioning to the pros, so the NBA, referee Tim Donaghy was caught betting on games and was later sentenced to 15 months in prison. Then Commissioner David Stern called it the most serious and worst situation that I've ever experienced, either as a fan of the NBA, a lawyer for the NBA, or a commissioner of the NBA. So obviously that is a huge deal, and we can expect when sports gambling is actually legalized that this kind of trend and this illegal activity can possibly increase because sports gambling will be normalized. In addition, this is an interesting point, how the State of the U, which is another website, claims that because sports gambling, obviously more people are going to gamble the bigger games, which will favor bigger teams and bigger markets. The advantage is to the big schools in the collegiate market. So, for example, the competitiveness of college football is already a real concern, and there's a worry that in 5 years the gap could widen if certain schools receive the lion's share of sports gambling profits. So, for example, if many people are betting on the college football powerhouse of Alabama, the Alabama will receive the lion's share of those profits, which will in turn bolster their program even more, which will lead to less competition, which is not what we want in college football. Another component of sports gambling is that it actually ruins the integrity of the game. So there's a concern that because sports gambling, it could become even more commercialized, and many sports organizations and sports teams could be concerned more about making money and increasing their gambling profits rather than the product on the field and the entertainment of the actual sport. So there's a concern already that, for example, in the MLB, baseball purists feel that the game is becoming too commercialized, and that this might exacerbate that with sports gambling. Now, more on the public health side, addiction is a major public health issue, as we know, and legalizing sports gambling paves the way for more people to get addicted to gambling, and that can lead to further addictions such as drugs. And that is obviously a negative for society. So there's a site, sportsinformationtraders.com, that there's the old saying, obviously, the house always wins. And because if sports gambling is legalized, you can literally lose your life savings if you make one click on a game. And that, if you lose your life savings, obviously is detrimental to society. So I think that covers the basics of sports gambling. This is an interesting topic. Obviously, I've done a couple videos on sports now, so I'm interested in this myself. But this is a very interesting topic, and I think it's debated widely throughout politics, and it's not really divided on party lines. But this is an issue that is worth exploring, and it's really interesting to see how this will go in the states that do legalize it and the states that will not legalize it. So we'll see. Thanks.